Welcome to the eighth episode of the Wolverine Whisper. We're back. As always, my name's Seth Berry, along with Ryan Krause and Noah Poser, and we're back just in time to get in the swing of the NCAA tournament here and talk about March Madness. Obviously, Michigan gets the 2 seed out west as they'll play Montana in the first game of their matchup on Thursday night at 9:20. And yeah, obviously just coming off a Big Ten tournament in which they played pretty well. Took care of Iowa and Minnesota with no problem last Friday and Saturday night. Then Sunday had Michigan State on the ropes, for a lot of that game, kind of like we saw the first 2 games with the Michigan State games. But, just for the third straight time, just wasn't able to close the game out. As Michigan State went on the 10-0 run in the last 2 minutes to edge Michigan by 5. So, just kind of wondering before we move on to the tournament, because obviously, looking forward is the most important thing, probably talk about and for the team right now. But just thoughts on the Big Ten tournament and kind of where Michigan, kind of stands going into March Madness. What do you guys think?
I don't know about many people after watching that, but after watching those 3 games, I'm actually pretty encouraged by what I've seen as they go into the tournament. Obviously, they beat Iowa and Minnesota, no problem, took care of them with ease. Set up the third matchup with Michigan State. Obviously, they couldn't get the victory there to get their 3rd straight Big Ten tournament title. But overall, I think throughout the season, Michigan has shown they can really compete with anybody on a neutral court or at home. Obviously, they were very good too, but on a neutral floor, they've been pretty much able to play with anybody that they've stepped on the court with. Obviously, losing to Michigan State for a 3rd time was rough, but before that, they were playing well, and in the tournament, they won't have to see MSU unless they get to the Final Four. So that shouldn't be much of an issue until then. So I think overall, going into the tourney, I feel pretty good after that Big Ten tournament.
Yeah, I share those thoughts. I think Michigan in the first 2 games of the Big Ten tournament looked like tournament Michigan, really playing solid defense and hitting some shots. Isaiah Livers really stepped up, and I think he's probably the X factor in the tournament. But yeah, they couldn't get it done against MSU. It looks like, I don't know, with Ward playing, it didn't look like MSU really lost much against us. I thought that was interesting since he missed the first 2 matchups, that maybe it would change the dynamic, but I don't think it really did. But you got Matt McQuaid went off. I think he had 27 points, so he's not going to do that every game. But yeah, I mean, you got to hand it to Michigan State. They played better and obviously won the Big Ten tournament, but it's a whole new game heading into the game tomorrow night against Montana.
Yeah, I think the point you make with Ward, just going back to the title game. Yeah, I mean, I just don't think he's a good matchup against Michigan. Izzo only played him 8 minutes, and I was kind of at the game, kind of, urging kind of Izzo, hey, go ahead and play Ward as many minutes as you want, because I don't feel like he could score over Teskey. And Teskey was playing really good post defense in that game as well. By far his best game versus Michigan State all year. It helped with Xavier Tillman going out with 2 fouls in the first half. He makes the biggest difference for Michigan State, I believe, against Michigan, kind of being that rim protector and taking away Michigan's dribble drives and, coming out and hedging out on ball screens and just, being a force down low for them. He's just super athletic, and Ward doesn't quite give him that type of athleticism, I think. So I think, he was a major difference in the Michigan State games, this year in all 3 matchups. And then, going back to McQuaid, I think, a lot of his shots, some of them were open, some of them had a hand in his face, but with the way, Michigan State spreads the court and, a lot of shooters, and the way Tillman rolls to the basket and that Winston can find him rolling for lobs, is like Michigan had to take away, something that Michigan State was doing to them. And in East Lansing, they had a bunch of pick and rolls where Tillman hurt them, and they took that away. But then Winston was able to find McQuaid on that skip pass for a lot of threes. So I mean, you just have to, it's give and take with how dangerous Michigan State's offense is, and unfortunately, McQuaid is just able to knock down a lot of those shots. But I think one topic coming away from the Big Ten tournament, I thought Michigan. No, I agreed with you. Like, Michigan is playing well. I think they have a real chance to make a run, especially in the region they're in. I think one concern I do have is kind of unlike last year. Like, I think overall this team is still a little bit better than last year's, but I don't know if they have that one person they can go to down the stretch, in a close game. I thought Poole made some bad decisions, especially late in the game. Ignis took a couple rush shots, with a lead. So who do you kind of, where do you think they can, make those corrections, and who do you think can kind of be the one to take those big shots and step up in those moments late in games?
Late in games, I feel like I've seen a lot, whether that be on Twitter or other places after that third Michigan State game. If I have a shot late in the game personally, I'd like to see Jordan Poole shoot it, because obviously Poole has shown in those moments that he's willing to take the big shot. And obviously last year in the tournament against Houston, he made the shot to send them to the Sweet 16, in which they ultimately got to the championship game. Obviously, Poole has not really been what everybody was hoping he would be for the majority of the Big Ten season. He's really struggled shooting the ball. And on defense, he's made some questionable decisions. But if they're going to make a run, and if they're going to be able to survive in late game situations, I still think that Jordan Poole is the guy who has to take that shot.
I'd say a healthy Charles Matthews is the guy I would want taking a shot. He just, I think he brings that veteran. He's one of the older guys on the team, and he just brings that veteran calming presence. And it seems like he can. Last year in the tournament, he played really well, and I think that he would be the guy I would turn to for a final shot.
I think that's a good point. It's interesting that you bring up Matthews, because he did only play 21 minutes in the Michigan State game. I don't know if that had to do with, still coming off the ankle and, playing consecutive games or whatever, and trying to limit his minutes. But I think, a lot of it had to do with just Livers playing better than him at this moment, and being a better matchup maybe in that game. But, I think that's important for Michigan, going in the tournament, is obviously Charles Matthews. Can we get that Charles Matthews back from, last tournament? And even before,
if he's 100% healthy, I think you'll see him play pretty well in the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, and before the ankle injury, he was playing pretty well. He injured against Michigan State in the first game, but and didn't have a great game that game. But that's a game he injured it. So, I mean, I think that's huge. It's huge to get him going. Like leading scorer of the tournament for Michigan last year. And then you talk about Ignis Brazdeikis, who's really done a good job getting Michigan going early in games. He scored the first 9 points against Michigan State when really nobody else could do much on offense early. It's just sometimes he'll try to drive to the basket and teams will focus in on him, and he'll get a little bit tunnel visioned, And
I was gonna say that I think he just tries to take a shot no matter what. He'll put his head down, and if there's three guys on him, he'll still try and shoot over him. Yep.
And it's not just him, I mean, when the ball sticks, I mean, it's everyone, there's a lot of standing. I feel like, especially with a slow pace offense with a lead, they get a little bit stagnant. We've seen that a little all year, and they just need to make sure they're getting quality looks, for 40 minutes. And that Beeline highlighted that as one of the things that really cost him in the MSU game, was that they wasted a lot of possessions, not necessarily by turning the ball over, but by taking poor shots. So But there's a lot of time spent talking about the negatives, but I think, like we said, there were a lot of positives from that Big Ten tournament. Just having their way with Iowa and Minnesota, Michigan State. Like Ryan said, really a great team. They deserve to win the Big Ten tournament, and we'll see what they do in their own regard. But yeah, it was a great game. They still had a chance to win, which is encouraging. They just need to fine tune some things before they go in. And with that being said, we'll transition over to kind of previewing Montana a little bit and previewing this weekend's matchup with them, and then a potential matchup with either Florida or Nevada. Assuming Michigan can get past Montana for a second straight year. And like I say, Montana comes in at a 26-8, 15 seed. Obviously, like I said, Michigan is the same matchup as last year. Their leading scorer is number 15, a forward, Jamar Ako, I think you pronounce it. Not really sure there. But yeah, he's averaging about 15 a game. But he's doubtful for this game coming up against Michigan with an injury. So, Montana has played without him this year, from what I've read, and they're playing a smaller lineup. Going with more of a guard-oriented lineup, shoot the ball really well from three, and it'll really spread you out. So, yeah, that's just kind of some of the things that that I vaguely know about them. What are you guys just looking for in that matchup, and for Michigan in that first game there?
Quick starts. I think that's the key in the tournament. You gotta be the one that hits first, and really try and impose your will at the beginning of the game, because you don't want to play from behind. Every minute is more tense that way. I feel like you can play a little more free if you get an early lead, and especially Michigan, because they can go through scoring droughts at times.
So.
Yeah. Go ahead.
In this game, obviously, Michigan is going to be, I don't know the exact line, but obviously Michigan's going to be a heavy favorite coming into this game. Montana did have a great season, obviously being in the tournament once again, winning the Big Sky Conference. Montana has a couple wins over tourney teams in Georgia State and North Dakota State, but nothing that really screams that they could be a potential upset team or Cinderella. But overall, like you said, for Michigan, you got to start fast. You don't want to get into another 10-0 hole like they did against Montana last year. This team isn't really fit to come back from large deficits. So I think it's important to get a fast start, make some easy shots early, see the ball go through the hoop, maybe to open up that offense and get everyone more confident as they see, so it can translate into the next round, assuming or hoping that they get by Montana. But honestly, Montana, like you said, doesn't really have much size. They obviously shoot the ball really well. They struggle from the free throw line, which is surprising for a team who's so good at shooting the three. But overall, their best player probably won't play in this game. They're a great story to be in the tournament once again, but this really shouldn't be all that much of a challenge for Michigan.
Yeah, I think one thing that John Beilein's teams are always good at is not overlooking these type of opponents coming into the tournament, just because that John Beilein has coached at these type of schools before, and realizes the type of attention to detail that they give, and the caliber of players that they have, realizing that they're still Division I athletes, out there, who can, if on a good day, can beat anybody. As we've seen in the past with, Middle Tennessee State over Michigan State, or Lehigh over Duke, or whatever it is, So I think that's one thing that we can be confident in Michigan, about Beilein's teams, that they are really going to focus in and lock in at this time of year. no matter who the opponent is. So, when you talk about game planning and scouting and, just those minor details and all that. So, like I said, I think, fast start's important. Just getting guys, like Matthew's confident. Jordan Poole, like we talked about, has to be more efficient. If he can do that in the tournament, Michigan, it'll bode really well for Michigan. I think, kind of piggybacking off our topic earlier about, taking the last shot, I feel like Poole is that guy, just because he's the one that's more likely to make, tough shots. And he can do it with a mid-range, he can drive, and he can, step back and hit the three as well. I think his arsenal is fit to kind of take over a game late. I just think he doesn't have a confidence issue. I think, just he needs to see the ball go in the basket a couple of times, for big shots a couple more times late. And I think that'll get him, going a little bit. But, and then assuming they advance to that, past Montana, they either play the winner of, obviously Nevada and Florida at the 7-10. So, just was kind of wondering, who do you guys, first of all, have winning that Nevada Florida game, and, just kind of, talk about if they were to, whoever they'd run into, if you'd like him to advance against either one of those teams.
So for this game, the Nevada-Florida game, first off, I think it's the hardest game in the entire tournament to pick, because with Nevada, it all depends on which Nevada team shows up. The Nevada team that we saw at the beginning of the season, the one we saw in last year's tournament, go on a deep run, or is it going to be the Nevada that lost to San Diego State, or the one, Nevada that lost to New Mexico? So, depending on that, obviously, Nevada has tons of talent, and they could easily win that game. But for me, it comes down to Florida. Florida's been on a bit of a roll lately. They managed to they managed to play their way into the tournament. Obviously, they got all the way up to a 10 seed to avoid the first four. So I actually have Florida winning that matchup. And if we see a potential Michigan-Florida matchup, obviously that's not going to be easy. Florida's a grinded-out sort of team. They don't play as slow as Michigan. They really have the same. Their defense has just been off the charts as of late, obviously knocking out LSU in the SEC tournament, beating them for a second time. They've shown they can compete with top teams. So I think that's the matchup we will see. And if we do see that matchup, not going to be an easy game for Michigan.
Yeah, to be honest, I haven't watched 1 second of Nevada or Florida basketball, so I'll be that guy that just takes the higher seed there. So even though from what I'm seeing, it looks like Nevada is they've been struggling the last couple weeks of the season, and Florida's been on more of a roll. But I think, I'll just go with the higher seed. I don't have much knowledge, but that's what
I've watched I've watched a little Nevada. It's hard with the teams that are out there, but and playing late. But I've been able to watch them a couple different times. Florida a couple different times. Obviously with the Martin twins, with Nevada, super really physical. Can score the ball. But like you said, are they really that battle tested? Obviously they, like you said, Ryan, struggled down the stretch of the season. So I do have Florida winning that game, and they might be able to give Michigan some problems, getting into them defensively. But I think it wouldn't be an easy game for Michigan to get by, but I'd fully expect them, to come out, with a win against either one of those teams. Matchup wise, like I said, Nevada just the inside presence, and with those, like I said, with the Martins, could be a challenge. But I would expect them to advance to the Sweet 16 there. Anything else, like how far do you have Michigan, going in this region? Do you think they can, do you think they can, are they a Final Four team? I mean, a lot of people, a lot of experts I've seen, have them slotted in the Final Four. Just, with Gonzaga supposedly being the weakest one seed and, just a lot of talk of, the matchups favoring Michigan in a lot of ways. So how far can this team go? And, yeah, I guess how far can they go?
So for me, it depends. It really depends on that Nevada-Florida game. I think Florida's going to win, and I think for Michigan's sake, they should also want Florida to win because, again, Nevada's such a wild card. They have the Martin twins. They have Jordan Caroline. If they're all clicking on all cylinders, that is a very difficult second-round game to play. Obviously, Nevada's a very good team. They've been ranked inside the top 25 all season long. They have tons of potential. Last year, you saw it. They brought back the same team, and they are a really tough matchup in round 2. I think they would still get by Nevada, and then you'd likely see either Buffalo or Texas Tech in the Sweet 16. Buffalo's scary, again, on the offensive side. Defensively, they're not great, so I think that would really help out Michigan in terms of managing to get their offense going. Texas Tech obviously plays just as good of defense as Michigan does. They're both two of the best 3 defenses, along with Virginia in the country. I do believe that will be a very tight matchup. Texas Tech's offense, I feel like, has had better moments consistently, but overall I think Michigan's offense has more potential. So I would probably lean towards Michigan in that matchup. And then you get to the Elite Eight where you'd have Gonzaga or possibly Florida State as the most likely teams they'll see there. Florida State, obviously, they have a lot of size, which I think could give Michigan trouble because I think that would maybe make John Teskey work a little bit harder. I think it would take away from his offensive game. And then Gonzaga, obviously, possibly outside of Duke, the most talented team in the country. They obviously are the only team to beat Duke at full strength. You have Rui Hachimura, who's a Naismith Award finalist. You have Brandon Clark, who is the West Coast Conference Defensive Player of the Year. So obviously they're not lacking for talent on that team. I would personally take Michigan as making it close, but I don't know if I can say on a neutral court that they could beat Gonzaga. So for me, I see Michigan as most likely an Elite Eight team, but I don't know. It'll be really tough for them to get by Gonzaga. Obviously, to get to the Final Four for a potential rematch with Michigan State once again, or possibly Duke, which Iggy Brazdeikis has made very clear he wants to play Duke. So I think they definitely can get to the Final Four, and I think they could make a run all the way to the title. But I see once they get to the Elite Eight, it's going to be very difficult to advance further, especially if Gonzaga is the team that they play in the Elite Eight.
Yeah, I'd probably be with you there, Noah. Maybe Elite Eight. I don't know. I don't have a great feeling about Michigan heading into the tournament. So I think they'll get past Montana, and then the second matchup there against either Florida or Nevada. But then it gets tricky even there in the Sweet 16. So, yeah, I don't know. I feel like they could get to the Final Four. They have I guess you could say they're in the easiest part of the bracket, easiest region in the bracket. But I think Gonzaga would pose a lot of problems for them. And, they've gone on deep tournament runs last year, obviously, and it could, they've been playing a lot of games, all of them. And if Matthews is not at full strength, I think that puts them at a disadvantage, maybe bowing out a little early.
Yeah, I think when you talk about Gonzaga, obviously the potential is there. I did watch them play against St. Mary's, and that was fairly ugly. Just they couldn't score the basketball for some reason, and I saw them in a couple other games this year where that wasn't the case. But they have size. Perkins a good player. Just I think the size that they have would maybe give Michigan some trouble. I don't know if they would be able to run Michigan off the perimeter much defensively. So that's one area Michigan, might do well against them. But obviously Gonzaga can shoot the ball as well. But Gonzaga could also run into Syracuse, I believe, in the second round, and we know how tough.
That's a big,
yeah, and that's a tough matchup with it. Yeah.
Whole teams pretty quickly in the tournament.
Yep, and it shuts down perimeter shooting, and all of a sudden you play against that length. You haven't played against it all year. Doesn't matter how many games Syracuse really loses in the regular season. They always seem to find ways to at least win a couple of games in the tournament. So I think even in a couple brackets I have Syracuse bouncing Gonzaga. So so depending on the matchups, I think I have Michigan in the Final Four anyway. Playing Duke in the Final Four, I have a hard time picking them to beat Duke once it gets to that point, or if it gets to that point. Not that I don't think that Duke doesn't have flaws, but Zion Williamson is just that much of a difference maker. You saw that on the court in the ACC tournament when he came back. But I mean, there's a couple teams where I think Duke can be given, a challenge even before the Final Four. I think one is the Sweet 16, and Virginia Tech getting Justin Blackman back, and then Blackshear tore Duke up in one of the games they played. I know Duke was without Zion in that one, but the way Virginia Tech shoots the ball and the way Duke doesn't shoot it particularly well from three. I mean, if Virginia Tech can get hot against them, they could bounce them in the Sweet 16. So I don't think that will happen. And then Michigan State is another team, that can give them problems just with the way they shoot the ball and spread you out. And obviously Cassius Winston being one of the best players in the nation can kind of take over a game. So not to mention that Duke really doesn't have a true big man, or at least they're much better in the wings than they are down low in the paint. So and Tillman gives people problems down there too. So if I were to bet on it, I don't think I would pick against Duke, but there are definitely some matchups to where they could lose. So, but as far as Michigan goes, I think a Final Four is in order for them this year. I think anything past that would be a bonus, but I do think I do see a path to the Final Four, and I think they'll get back there for the second straight year. So, anything else you guys want to add? Just the tournament as a whole, or Michigan going forward, or anything like that.
So, obviously, like the tournament is every year, Michigan's path is going to be largely dependent on what happens in other parts of the bracket. Obviously, last year they managed to run into Texas A&M and then Florida State, and then they managed to play Loyola Chicago in the Final Four. So, obviously, it'll depend on matchups. For example, if they run into Texas or Gonzaga in the Elite Eight, that's going to be a little bit tougher than if they run into a team like Syracuse or Florida State. And if they make it to the Final Four, potentially you could see Michigan State again, or you could end up with a team like Duke, or you could even end up with Virginia Tech, because Virginia Tech, like you said, they're getting Blackman back. Blackshear's really stepped up lately. They have a lot of talent. I think they showcased that in the ACC tournament. They almost got by Florida State, lost in overtime, a game that they really should have won. So, obviously, and then once you get there, who knows what's going to happen? Largely dependent on the bracket. They have talent. They have a team that is capable, when playing at their full potential, can make a run. But it all comes down, obviously, to their offense, which as we have all seen, goes through lots of stretches where they aren't really able to do all that much. And if that happens in the tournament, and if it happens early in the tournament, then they won't advance as far as maybe they should.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'd obviously have to agree with that. I mean, a lot of it is matchup dependent. A lot of it is just
it's so hard when there's. I mean, we still got the entire tournament to go. We'll have a better picture if they advance past this weekend. What's going on? It'll be easier to project if they can get to a Final Four, because we haven't. I mean, for the most part, we haven't sat down and watched every game that all their potential opponents have played. So.
Yeah. I mean, like, I don't know about you guys, but like filling out a bracket this year, I don't know. It seems like it gets harder and harder for me every year. Like I follow college basketball like probably more than the average person. Like, I wouldn't call myself an expert by any means, but I know a lot about a lot of the teams, and it's so hard to pick because there's so much parity, and there's anyone can lose, on any given day. I don't have a ton of upsets like past the Sweet 16, but once it gets to like the Sweet 16, it's like, you just don't know what's going to happen. Then you don't know who's going to be kind of that team who might make a run, further. If it's a Buffalo or if it's, whoever, it could be. There always seems to be someone outside the top 4 seeds that make a run late, into the Elite Eight or Final Four. You just don't know where it's going to come from. So, yeah, it's really tough for me.
It's hilarious. Looking at ESPN, a lot of their guys are like, well, we're just going to go the top 4 seeds are going to be in the Final Four.
They always do.
1 or 2 seeds. Nobody else has a chance.
Mm-hmm. The one team I'm interested in, and I think they're like a total swing or a miss. Like, they can either make the Final Four or they'll lose in the first round. It's Auburn. Like, they're just they shoot the lights. Like, when they're going, they shoot the lights out. They either shoot a 3 or a layup. They'll just go like 100 miles an hour the whole game. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But they got really hot in the SEC tournament, and if they continue to play like that, like they could run through everybody. I mean, they could beat North Carolina in the Sweet 16, I think, and move on, and just beat them be like 195. But I'm super excited to see them. I think as a 5 seed, I think they're the most underseeded team in the tournament, just based on how they're playing as of late. And obviously they were a top 10 team earlier in the year, hit a rough patch, but then seems to have found their stride. So then on the flip side, I think Kansas at a 4 is one of the most overseeded teams in the tournament, because they did a lot of their damage early in the season with Azubuike at center, and now he's out. So I think Kansas could be an upset alert, even maybe against Northeastern in the first round, but we'll see as far as that goes. But yeah, anything else you guys want to add before we kind of get things obviously rolling and, just watching basketball all day? That'll be obviously really fun.
Yep. Yeah,
so
it's a good time of the year.
Yeah.
So you said that Auburn is the most underseeded team in your opinion. For me,
Right.
I would give that honor to Cincinnati. I don't understand at all how they managed to end up as a 7 seed after.
As long as you didn't say Iowa, I'm good.
Iowa is underseeded, but that's a different discussion. But Cincinnati, after winning the American tournament, after beating Houston in that conference championship game, I have no idea what the committee was thinking when they made them as a 7 seed. Obviously, it's not great news for Iowa having to play them in the first round, or Tennessee potentially having to play Cincinnati in the second round. But in terms of a team that I feel like is not underseeded, team that's a really low seed has to be, for me, Oregon as a 12 seed. Obviously, they weren't projected to be in the field until they beat Washington in the Pac-12 title game, but they've gotten hot at the right time. They obviously won the Pac-12.
Healthy. Yeah, they got healthy at the end of the year too, which helped.
Their defense has been amazing as of late. They draw a Wisconsin team in the first round that really struggles as of late on offense. Obviously, Wisconsin can play just as good as defense as Oregon, but it really will depend on what Ethan Happ does in that game. I have Oregon winning that game, and I also have Oregon winning their second-round matchup, potentially against Kansas State, to get into the Sweet 16. So I think that they are, as crazy as it sounds to call Oregon a Cinderella, I think Oregon is the Cinderella team that you have to keep an eye on.
Yeah. I think, I also had that same thing happening with Oregon advancing to the Sweet 16. It's definitely not your typical, 5-12 matchup. Obviously, we've seen 12 seeds win that quite a bit. But, it's like I think the spread is like it's a pick 'em game, or Wisconsin favored by 1 or something like that. But Oregon might even be favored. I don't remember which way it went. But, the spread is super close, and it'll be obviously Wisconsin to get Oregon to play kind of the style. They always kind of get teams to play that style. But, I think Oregon's going to find a way to come out on top in that and, could make a little bit of a run. So, it'll just ready to get, obviously get watching the games and, excited to get it rolling. So, I think that'll about do it for this episode of the Wolverine Whisper. So, obviously, for all the tournament coverage, tune into Michigan Sports and Entertainment. We'll have coverage Michigan State, all throughout the tournament. So, thank you guys for listening in, and
Go Blue.
Go Blue. We'll see you next week.